Forum will call this meeting to order. Can we have someone take the minutes for the meeting?
Yeah, I can.
Brad?
Yeah.
Brad?
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Brad.
No problem.
Declaration of conflict of interest. If you're looking at the agenda, can anybody identify conflict or perceived conflict of interest? Seeing or hearing none, move on to the next item. Number 4, review and approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Looks good to me.
Yep.
And I can second that.
Bill, and seconded by any contrary minded? All in favor? I should have done that
Aye.
first. All in favor? To show your hands, we can see. And everybody is in favor. Motion is carried. Adoption of December the 15th minutes. You had a chance to read them. Any errors or omissions you'd like to point out? If there aren't.
Just a question. Katrina sent us 2 sets of minutes. So do we have 2 sets of minutes that we have to approve?
No, I guess it would be the November minutes were already approved, but I sent them because we had skipped over some of the items. Like we didn't follow up on all the items from those minutes at the last meeting because we just wanted to have a quick Christmas one. So I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to review them for this meeting for any follow-up, but they were approved already.
Okay.
We're just approving the December 15th minutes. Now the motion to approve the December 15th minutes as presented. Anybody who was.
But I don't think I can, so I'll remain quiet.
Yeah, I'll move to do it.
Okay. Was that Brad or Sean?
That was me.
Brad?
All motion.
Second it. Did I, Sean?
Good.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank
Sean
you.
is second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Mark by aye or show of hands. Contrary minded? Seeing none? Motion carried. Okay, number 6, item for discussion. So we have policy project committee updates. Oh, the committee updates. A is food waste. Brian and Sean, is there an update for that?
So I'm trying to open maybe and technical difficulties, but anyway, we were able to meet with Todd. Todd's last name escaping me right now by law for City of Charlottetown.
Todd Sutcliffe.
Thank you very much. Yes, Sutcliffe, yeah. So it was myself, Brad, Trina, and Todd. It was the 4 of us. So we basically were oh, hi there, Jordan. We were seeking some feedback on the file, in particular on the proposed bylaw amendment, amendments that we put forward, just to make it a little more clear that you are to provide some parameters for that. There's I think a few key things that came out of it. I'm just trying to do it from memory here. The first was that the way the bylaws are currently interpreted, it is permitted. So that's the first thing, which is good. You know, the way the city is currently interpreting the bylaw, accurate comic posting is not prohibited. And subject to certain limits, such as if it were to infringe on other bylaws, unsightly premises, etc., or nuisance. Then the other bit of feedback was, and this is understandable, pretty reasonable, is Todd just wanted to ensure he flagged a few of the common issues that come up with backyard composting when they do receive complaints. Usually it's people putting inappropriate waste in backyard composting, i.e., meat or just everything. The second one would be backyard composting too close to an adjacent property. And the third is related to the first two, and that's just odors. So so we talked about that, and those are all very understandable issues. I don't think anyone would want to see that happen. So we talked about brainstorming on some initial solutions. Whether the main one would appear to be containers, that there's some parameters around the containers that are used. Another one would be around that some waste is used versus other waste should not be used for composting. And that could be communicated possibly in a bylaw amendment, but certainly in some of the more guidelines that are communicated to the public. And then the third would be looking into other jurisdictions that have bylaws, guidelines, any kind of language around this topic, to see if other jurisdictions have set out almost like setback requirements, X number of feet from an adjacent property. Those were a few of the issues and possible directions we could go in for solutions. That's what I could remember off the top of my head here. I'm going to check in with Brad and with Trina.
Sorry, what was that?
I just noted that I was going to check in with the two of you to see if there's anything I missed. I know I did next steps, but we can circle around to that.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Just making the bylaws a little bit more clear. Providing education on the website, and then also before that, looking at what other municipalities are doing with regards to composting and getting that information out there to people. So it was a good conversation with Todd. It's nice to know that composting is allowed, even though the bylaws aren't super clear, but they're not taking people's compost away or anything. So seems to be all on the up and up there. Just needs to have some fine tuning, but I think the education part is the most important thing that came out of it all, and having some information on the website I think would be beneficial.
Megan?
Trina, did you want to add anything?
I think Megan made a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. So, so if I was to complain about a neighbor, the city, there's no way that the city would side with me, I guess, is what I'm asking, because that was our original conversation. Remember, Brad, where it's not that it's not allowed, but can it be interpreted and advocated in such a way that would impact the ability for folks to compost?
Well, it seemed like Todd kind of identified that no, that wouldn't happen unless they weren't, unless it was infringing other bylaws, or if it was too close to a property, or everything Sean brought up. If it's not being kept properly and there's smell and pests and all that sort of stuff. But I think that would bring in other bylaws into like unsightly premises and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that just the act of composting, as long as you're doing it responsibly. But that's where the city needs to identify how to do it responsibly.
Yeah. The education.
And that's where the education component comes
in. And I totally agree with that. And I think, there's so many facets of education that can be approached for this topic. And I ask that too, both because there's sometimes strong community member lobbyists and in their own way. But I also ask just for succession because Todd is the only bylaw officer. So if he were to go, say, this year and someone else new were to come in, I'm just sort of thinking about from that. Like, it's great that he sees it in that way, but I'm asking the question to make sure that it's not subjective and it actually is objective.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Megan, because I think Brad, what you said captures it. But the way that you phrased it, Megan, as being like, there's no way that the city kind of would side with that perspective, I think is largely at the moment true, but in the longer, like you say, in the longer run, less certain, I guess. Like, we have no reason to assume that it won't be that, but we also kind of don't have any reason to assume that it will be.
Yeah.
So I think that the plan, my understanding is that the next steps, Brad and Sean, are to kind of draft some language that Todd would be more comfortable with and still pursue an amendment to the bylaw. I'm correct in
Okay.
that? Right? Yeah.
Okay. That sounds great then. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me.
But I mean, we're never going to get around like the nuisance bylaw type side of it. Like,
No. And that's fine. I think that's reasonable and that all makes sense. And that's where the education piece will come into play. It was more like the subjectivity of some of the other stuff. So, but that all sounds great. Nice work, Sean and Brett.
My takeaway from this is, I guess, unless the bylaw is vigorously tested by a neighbor, we won't really know which way it's going to go. And I guess that's why we're doing this exercise, is to make sure that the bylaws are as clear and concise as possible. So when something does come up, it's not left to the subjective opinion of whoever is in charge of the bylaws. So good work. Thanks for reporting. Healthy food and beverages. Do we have?
Yeah, so the challenge with this file has been the fact that I've learned the work at the provincial committee level has not been super successful this past year because of COVID, because canteens are not open across the province. So the funding that I mentioned from Recreation PEI, I think I mentioned it a few months ago, there hasn't been really much uptake and there aren't really updates. So I'm wondering instead if it's about like working with the city to build resources, sort of in the same line about education, as opposed to pursuing the policy, because from the beginning, this policy area, while it is a low-hanging fruit, we need to build on the work that's been done already with the stakeholders and not just come in and sort of say these are the policies, just because a lot of the facility managers, but it might be different within the city, and that's something that I'm just not clear on. And Katrina, you may be able to help me more with that, but not going in and saying this is how it must be done, because there is a bit of the debunking of the myths of food costing and revenue from healthier food versus not as nutritious food, if you will. So I don't know if it's about going in the education route or if it's going maybe first now to look at some of the event pieces that we talked about early on too when we're exploring. I just think that this one it's been too challenging. And I know we're talking about future topic areas today too. It's just been a little bit too challenging with COVID and the work not really going anywhere. But maybe we can have a one-on-one conversation about it, Katrina.
I think that's what I was going to suggest too. I think for your benefit as well, because I don't think that you were here last month. Am I right? Okay. So my role with the city just has been kind of like continually changing for a little bit now, since Jess came back. But we've kind of it's starting to settle finally, and we spoke about this a long time ago about like a potential sort of role around like food and health promotion. So that seems to be sort of where the dust is settling, but there's a lot of dust yet to settle. But But anyways, so that's been on my radar, and is one of the things that potentially too, like we might in me have a little bit more staff power behind, depending on
Yeah.
certain factors. So yeah, maybe you and I set up a SAC meeting to.
Sure. And I can pull in one of the health promoters too for that, that is an RD and focused on healthy eating. Like I said, like I really want to see work and policy done in this area and have it wrapped up, but respecting the work that's already been done and not stepping on toes. And then with COVID, it's just, you know, there have been limitations. So
Yep, that sounds great. Thanks, Megan.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda would be community gardens. Is there any updates?
Is that
Yep.
me? Am I on?
Do you have an update, Phil, or?
Yeah, okay, there. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Yeah, I did a little bit of, well, I think I mentioned last month that the city has an application process for if you want to have a community garden box in a nearby park. And you can also apply if you want to have the creation of a community garden. So I looked around to see if there was any information on how many community gardens are kind of recommended per population, and came across some vague information, but I think it would be kind of interesting to do more. It seemed like the statistic I came up with was that for every 10,000 people of population, there should be 4 community gardens. So that would be approximately 20, 24 community gardens in Charlottetown with that scale. What I wasn't able to get any concrete information was, you know, what qualifies as the scale or size of that community garden. You know, there's quite a range of the ones that exist in Charlottetown already. From I'm pretty sure the Legacy Garden is the largest with over 200 plots, but there's also one by the church up the street that, you know, might have a dozen plots. So I'd like to continue to pursue this and see if maybe turn it into some sort of action plan that we should have a recommendation of X number of community gardens of a minimum size per neighborhood of, you know, or district, given the population. And is my colleague online? I see that there's somebody here on the phone.
Samara is here. Yes.
Samara, do you have anything to add?
Is now a good time to talk about the video promotion that I might do, Katrina?
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, if you want to give an update on that, and then there's been a few things happening on the city side of things around community gardens, I can give that update after.
Okay, perfect. So I am proposing to create a video for promotion of the application that Phil was just mentioning. In it, I would explain what the community garden application is. It would be mostly visuals with some text plus a voiceover or like narration. It would be 30 to 60 seconds in length, and then another 15-second clip for social media. And that social media would be the city social media. And then we're also hoping to put it on the website and make it shareable. And then, like, of course, pass it around, give it access to our partners and our friends in the garden, etc. And then the only expense to that would be if you wanted French subtitles on there, because they'd have to be sourced, or it's subtitles are just a lot of work. So that would be the only expense, and it would be really small. So that's what I have to say.
Great, thanks, Samara. Just to build on that, so we did meet, Samara and I think Phil, you were having some email issues, so you weren't able to attend, but Samara and I met with one of my colleagues, Jessica Corkum-Gorel, she's our Forest and Environment Officer, but technically the community garden portfolio falls under her. And then we also met with Carly, who's one of our new communication staff. And we met to sort of discuss promotion of the community garden program because the application that has been mentioned was launched. I don't know, I feel like my sense of time right now isn't very good, but in the last year, maybe a year ago, maybe 8 months ago, I don't really know, but a while ago now, we haven't really had any uptake. But it's pretty clear that there's an untapped need for more community gardens. Like we know there's wait lists at most of them and that kind of thing. But we'd really be looking for more community ownership. So we sort of discussed that whole thing. That's where the video is partly stemming from. Like we feel like there's not really a whole lot of support along with that application, sort of help people understand what maybe they'd really be taking on, or that it's even an opportunity that the city would potentially like support with financial and in-kind resources, the development of these gardens. So we came to the fact that we need to do some promotion, which is where the video is coming from, but we also felt like, I mean, obviously we needed to identify community champions to take this on. And we're really lucky in Carly that she has quite a bit of municipal experience prior to coming to Charlottetown. And she has worked on a project around community gardens before. And they were in a sort of similar situation where they had launched a program, but they weren't really getting uptake. And the route that they ended up taking was sort of reaching out to partners and identifying a specific partner who wanted to take this on and kind of like walking through the process with them, kind of like a pilot project that they could then promote and sort of show how it all worked and almost like test their application process. Because even though we have community gardens already, they've all been around for a while and they haven't gone through the process that we're talking about. Like Des Brisé is the only one that officially gets city support, and it's a bit like all over the place. Like it changes year to year, and there's just a need to solidify some of this. So anyway, we thought that the Newcomers Association might be a good partner in this. So I don't have a whole lot of updates on that. We're meeting with them tomorrow to have sort of a preliminary discussion about around whether we can work together, maybe to find whether it's from their client base or within their organization. But that's certainly not a for sure thing, but that's kind of one of the approaches that we're taking as well. And if they're not interested, then looking at other potential partners.
Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Go ahead, Bernie, I can wait.
I don't have a yellow hand up. Go ahead.
I don't want you to lose your thought. I was just gonna say that sounds great to me. I think the community champion piece is so important to all of this. Because even thinking about something like the Des Brisé, well, that's been around for some time, but it also is, there are many community champions rallying around that and wrap around that garden. And the reason it's been around for so long. So I think that's really a key piece of this. I think working with newcomers would be great. And I think mapping this across food insecurity would be useful. So I think looking at somewhere like Holland College, maybe even like as a post-secondary student population would be interesting, or UPEI. And then I also think the Black Cultural Society or BIPOC Usher recently partnered. I don't know if it's with Sean's department's food security grant program or not, but I believe they're doing something with a community garden. Maybe that's with you, Katrina, at the city, but I can't remember. I just know that I was talking to someone recently, and I say recently, but it might have been last summer. Again, time warp. But yeah, those are just some populations that come to mind. But definitely post-secondary would be useful to capture as well somehow and engage, because we know that that's a population that's more food insecure too.
Yeah, definitely great suggestions.
And probably would be keen to learn skills if they don't know them already. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that one sort of like challenge right at the moment is that we need people off the bat that like potentially have
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah.
we're looking for a pretty small pool of people in a way off the bat that hopefully will then recruit some of the people that are more on the.
And then mentor and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that it all sounds great. Yeah, nice work.
My question was, when you were asking for an uptake for this program, is it because you're looking for mentors and or you're looking for acquisition of land or land use for building guards? Like what was, I'm sorry, I probably should be more aware of this program and I'm not.
You mean the application
Yeah,
form that we're talking about?
yeah,
It's basically a form that community members can fill out to request. They would be using city land and getting city support to start a new community garden. So they would be responsible for like the logistical side of things. So like physically making the plots probably, and like the administrative side, like finding people to garden and coordinating volunteers and anything else around that. But we would provide land, we would provide water, we'd probably provide a yearly stipend. And then it's kind of flexible, like there'd be a negotiation process, or I mean, that sounds rigid, but you know, there'd be discussions to determine what kind of city support was available in a given site. But
because I recall someone, maybe it was Samara at I think the very first meeting we had with the new council about the land around where the water treatment plants are, or not it's not the water treatment, it's where the water pumps are. Like there, I think there's one across from the seniors home, the Mount, where there's a big stretch of land there close to a source of water, but not being used, which would be potentially a good space to grow a garden. It'd be something like that, like along those lines.
maybe potentially, I don't think we've talked about those sites, although we could. I don't pretend to know what the challenges of using a site like that would be, just from like when they need to access it, and I don't know enough about it. But but we have, I don't think there's a shortage of parkland. That, like, we have a lot of parks in the city that basically have nothing in them. Like they're kind of just grass that gets cut. So I think Jessica put a bunch of work in. There's a map on the site where the application form is. There's a map identifying the priority areas of the city. I'm not quite sure exactly how they determine them, but she worked with our GIS technician to like overlay a variety of factors to sort of figure out where we might want to put them. So they're like broad areas. It's not like specific sites, but yeah, I think the idea being that they'd be in city parks. But that's an interesting idea, and I can bring it up with her. I don't know if Jessica would know more about whether those types of sites could be used.
Cool. It's evolving. Sounds like. Yep.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions on that? Greenhouse or community garden? No? Okay. Greenhouse. I had a brief talk with Todd. He's my neighbor. So as we were exchanging snow shovel the last week, and greenhouses are allowed in backyards. I guess a similar conversation where you can't build, it has to be a certain size and it can't be too close to an existing building from a neighbor, fence, things like that. He's never had any complaints regarding greenhouse. I think the one that kept coming up earlier, a few years ago, when it was first brought up about the Holland College wanting to build something, I think that was before his time. So not sure what, again, until the bylaw is tested vigorously, I guess we won't know which way it's going to go. So I'm still working on wordsmithing a policy that would kind of identify better support via a policy for the city. That's where I'm at with greenhouses.
And Bernie, when you say policy, do you mean like, are you thinking like an amendment to the zoning bylaw?
Sorry, bylaw. I mean a bylaw. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been writing policy all day, and I'm tired.
No, all good. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, it'd be more. helping to improve the bylaw as the way it's written, which lack of. Yeah, very silent on what you can and cannot do.
Great. Thanks, Bernie.
Any questions? Maybe we could put a greenhouse on the new community garden. Get it all done together. Okay, if there's no questions, the asset map. Katrina, Jordan, Samara, who wants to start off?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Jordan, do you have any updates?
No, I don't. No. Was our last meeting, was that before our last board meeting or after? I can't remember.
I think it was before the last meeting.
Yeah. I don't know what what we were supposed to do after that. I feel like it was we were scheduled to meet again, and then sort of things shut down again. I think COVID has kind of limited our ability to look at that again. Katrina, were there any takeaways from that you want to speak to?
There were a number of action items for everybody that I don't think anybody, including myself, have done. So I can't really give anybody a slap on the wrist for that one. But I think we had sort of one of them, and maybe Samara has an update on this one actually, was the so I shouldn't say no one. Was that Samara was working on the that resource kind of for newcomers, like that pulled the resources most relevant for newcomers. But then us as a group, the idea being for all of us individually to kind of start trying to identify like missing assets that have been added, that need to be added, and go through and see if like we notice anything that's been closed. And then as we do that, to be sort of trying to draw connections between assets in our mind that maybe like we can begin to build, almost like acting as a
and I think we were going to also look at potentially new categories, like categorizing them a little bit differently. And I think that was one of the things we're going to look at as well. So yeah, I think that's still on the agenda for that group.
Yeah, I think, and like look at like one of the things that was flagged was like whether it be new categories or whether it just be like more of a legend that's created that can be just to add some description for some of those, and that can then be like translated potentially too, just to make it more accessible.
Yeah. Exactly. So. And we talked about having the labels be, you know, maybe even icons so that it would sort of transcend language. Yeah, no, I think that is where things ended off with that group.
Yeah. So I think it sounds like maybe we need a bit of a regroup, but yeah, Megan.
Yeah, and I know I'm not involved in this work anymore, so I'm just jumping in here to give some context for the categories. They are tied to the food charter that we had developed. So there's a reason that those categories came to fruition. So they're not just random.
Okay.
I think it would be important to like kind of keep things, I guess, in line. Maybe we are going to look at changing the food charter someday, and that would be different than too. But just some context there. That's where that.
Okay. Thanks, Megan. Thank you.
But Megan, are they all? So you can sort it by food charter, but then there's another option too. And where did those ones come from?
They came from somewhere. I have not looked at this in so long, but there's a definite reason why the two options were there. I can go back to where that second layer of categories came from for sure.
Okay, because I was curious about that, and I don't even know if I guess I was probably around when that came to be. But yeah, I definitely don't want to remove the food charter ones. I'm not even sure that, and I think it's still being discussed. I'm not even sure we should fully change them, but I think some of them are a bit confusing for people. Like we've had questions from people about them. So I think that's where the idea for like a legend came from, where there's like a description.
Yeah, a legend and some descriptors for sure would make sense because that we didn't get to that stage when we initially did it so that makes a lot of sense. I'll look into where that other category came from. I haven't looked at that map. I think I have PTSD from the workshop.
I think you looked at it more than you should have ever had to look at it, and
I honestly don't think I've looked at that stuff since early 2021 or like maybe the workshops. So I'll look back and figure out why those categories were picked.
Don't blame you.
It's the asset mat is one thing that's a living document that the council has that I guess we will probably see it at least every, if not every meeting, every other meeting, just to see where we're at, and updates. And I think last meeting we had, I think Sean or Brad, someone brought up a new resource to be added to it. So it's good that we don't lose sight of it. Once it's done, we don't stop talking about it. So I think it's good that we have it on the agenda, at least if not every time, every other time. Any questions? Asset map, anybody have anything new they want to add to it?
The
Resource?
only question I have is about, I remember sometime last year we talked about the new library construction, renovation, all of that. And if that's an avenue we could embed some of that work in, but I know we never followed through on it, both because of COVID and because they weren't done, but just thought I would raise that because I'm just been thinking more about the utilization of that as a service, but also how we can mobilize the map a little bit more than just being an online tool.
I don't think that we haven't done anything on it yet. One idea, we did toss around a number of ideas around that. I remember from like almost like a kiosk to various ideas. I think internally from a staff perspective, we kind of had some concerns with the kiosk idea, just of like the maintenance of it and like even the cost and all of that. But one thing that came out that once the library is sort of ready to go, I plan to pursue, and I think us almost like a department sort of are hoping to pursue is so the same colleague that I was talking about, Jessica, she worked in Mississauga before she came here, and they worked with the library and had a partnership where if like the city had some sort of resource or initiative going on, it would be like the first thing that popped up on the library computer screens when somebody went to log in. I don't know if that's something we can do here, but it seems kind of like an easy way to potentially get people seeing something like the asset map, even just for like a month or something.
Yeah, that could be really cool as well. I don't have any solutions. I only raise it because we haven't talked about it in a while and I don't know where that ended up in conversation. Like,
is there a timeline for when this library will be completed? Anybody know?
Yeah, they have to finish Province House first.
Yeah, that's way behind and over budget, and it'll I think that'll continue. It's a historic site, but hopefully the library will be.
That's been under construction for as long as I've lived in PEI, which is.
It only took 4 years to build it.
Yeah.
I think my son said it's been here since we moved, so it's like, or no, since he was in grade 4, so like 8 years they've been building.
Most of it, yeah.
Anyways, it's a lot of rock, it's a lot of windows, it's a lot of whatever they're doing inside there. So, and it would be nice. I'm very eager to see this new library. It'd be kind of cool to see on the save screen something about things that the Food Council is doing when people walk in and go up to a screen. That's a nifty idea, which shouldn't be costly, and I'm sure there are other ideas as well. Anyways, let's move on if there's no other questions.
I just wanted to add a few things, Bernie, if I could.
Okay. Yep.
I didn't have my notes in front of me before, but I was looking at again population size and how much area we should have devoted to community gardens, and according to the real estate agencies on PEI, the average family size in Charlottetown is 2.2 people, and a fairly good gardener should be able to raise most of their produce on 100 square feet for a family that size. And basically across Canada, about 40% of families already have a vegetable garden. So I was just kind of doing rough calculations and thinking, based on the number of square feet for the garden, doubling that for walk areas, etc. I would guesstimate that Charlottetown should have about 6 acres of land devoted to community gardens. And we could do a bit more research on that to refine those numbers, but it might be something to propose. I have no idea what the square footage of community gardens exists in Charlottetown. I don't know if anybody does, but it might be interesting to find out and to kind of present a recommendation of what the city should be targeting for. That's it.
Yeah, that sounds like a proper parameter. I'm not sure what the word is. Something to measure so we can show the powers that be that make the decisions. And if there are any challenges, well, it's based on numbers in the study of what other people are doing and based on population. It's a good reference to have. I think it's a good idea. Thanks for crunching the numbers. How big is the legacy garden, Phil? Just
Well, the entire landmass is 8.5 acres, but the community garden, it's about 1.5 acres.
so it gives you an idea of the size of gardens you could have. And that would just be inside city limits, right? We're talking about Charlottetown.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big parcel.
But it could be in the form of strip gardens along roadsides, boundaries around parks. I'm sure if we wanted to, we could find lots of, we could look at examples of like what Europeans do. And like I was in Taiwan a number of years ago, and it was like really incredible to see people were gardening everywhere.
Megan?
Yeah, I saw an interesting clip actually when there were some initial big winter storms, and this guy was walking around. I don't know what city it was, but he was basically mapping, and I forget the word for it, where cars and people walk. And the space, we don't. If you think about our one-way streets, there's a way where you would never have certain cars turning right in a direction of a one-way street. So that corner does not need to look the same as on the other side of the road. And so you could actually use that space for gardening or, trees, anything like that. So it was kind of interesting to see because I don't often associate winter storms with mapping out community gardens, but it was kind of neat. I'll have to look up what the guy's name was and the terms that he was using. There's probably some research around that, but just to build on Phil's points, for sure, there's some ways to embed. There's a lot of concrete where there probably doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And this 6 acres could be an accumulation of lots. It doesn't need to be on.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that's really cool, Megan, and really great thoughts, Phil. Oh, okay, sorry, I have a dog trying to get attention. But I guess now I've completely lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? Oh, just to say that I don't know for Charlottetown if space, at least at the moment, is an issue. That's not to say that, I think efficient land use is always a good thing, and definitely removing concrete from places that's not needed is a good thing. So all things to think about. But I think at the moment, there's lots of places to put gardens, but we need people to do it. And it realistically, I don't think it without, I mean, anything could happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's room for the city to take on some coordination at some point. Right now, there's not. And so right now, I think in the immediate sense, we're happy to find land for people. It's the people that we need.
I'm thinking about right now the project downtown. I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's something like Adopt a Garden, that sort of thing, or Adopt a Corner, that sort of thing. And different businesses will be responsible for setting up just greenery, flowers, etc. Um, Given that that's something that already exists, I wonder if either if folks are interested in, uh, making efficient use of land, especially in the downtown as well. Um, I wonder if either a similar approach could be taken, or if some of the businesses involved in sponsoring that might be involved in doing some kind of food production. And if I get ahead of myself a little bit, I think people raise concerns around, well, what if people eat all the food? And I would just say that's kind of the point. Um, so that might be an interesting kind of twist on that particular promotion. Is do people want to plant food on with what had been just a gardening project? Because it could be both.
That's a really good point,
But,
Sean.
Sean, I
It's
don't know
actually
if
one
anybody
that's
else is having a hard time hearing you, but everybody else's voice is quite clear, but yours is kind of muffled. I don't know if you're from your phone or whatever, but I have a hard time hearing you.
I don't mind trying again there. Phil, I just mentioned that suggested that perhaps that existing project where downtown different local businesses will like quote unquote adopt a corner to sponsor planting flowers and this sort of thing. Suggested that perhaps the next time around for this coming growing season, food production could be included in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a thought. I think it's a really good thought, Sean, and it's come up kind of like in
Yeah.
small conversations before. And apparently they do a theme every year. So I'm curious to see if they'd be willing to do a food theme, and maybe like the businesses would be willing to donate the food or that kind of thing. It could be worth pursuing for sure.
I've got to think that there may be some openness to that. If you think about how the city could present that and how individual businesses could present
I just
that.
wanted to follow up on a point.
I think maybe just keep going, Sean.
Some connection challenges there. We'll wait for Phil to rejoin. Food security is such a big issue right now. It's become a buzzword through COVID, but most pertinently now it's an affordability issue in relation to inflation and supply chain issues. So that, I've got to think that a number of businesses would love to be able to say we planted X number of easy stuff, carrots, beans, peas, in the name of food security and that sort of thing.
And I think Phil had brought that up a while back in regards to why are we planting so many flowers at corners and we should be maybe planting food instead. From there, I'm not sure where, how you take that idea and make sure that whoever's organizing this, I think now Katrina's saying it's a theme, so maybe they do have it on their calendar that they'll move to a food production theme as opposed to just flowers. That's something you can share, Katrina?
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out. It's downtown Charlottetown that does it.
I'd like to
Yeah, I think it's DCI that does it. Anyway, I know
I can.
sorry? Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
Out or something. Okay. First off, I'm not so sure that I like the idea of ice because
Sorry, Phil,
Food
you're
feeds the
buffering
body
too
and
much.
flowers fizzle. Ah, damn.
We've not heard, we've heard flowers,
Okay.
then flowers,
Um,
and then flowers.
all
Sorry.
right.
Phil, perhaps you could use
Can you
the
bear
chat
now?
function there.
We can, do you want me to send you, there's a link, or there's a phone number you can call instead of tuning in online, if that might be better. I can put it in the chat. Was that Samara?
Yeah.
Samara, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, we're just
Phil,
checking the
you can
lines.
use the chat box there too,
Yeah.
as John said.
What's the phone number?
You see the phone number in your chat box, Phil?
Oh, okay.
Like the Brady Bunch. No? You guys must know the Brady Bunch. Want to try again, Phil? Okay. Unless someone else has a suggestion what to do here. I'm not very computer savvy.
Okay, there we go. Access code.
I think all the information needed should be there.
Okay, well, it's 6:30 and
So it sounds like, Katrina, there was a group.
Mute everybody who's not muted. So if you,
So am I on?
I think as the host, you can do that. Eh?
I am, I'm like overriding people's.
I think you're back on, Phil.
Yeah, I'm talking on the phone.
Wait just a second. I think I muted him.
What would you just? I will listen.
Can you hear me, Phil? Or any of us?
So feel free to type any ideas into the chat.
It is muted.
If
Okay. There's like this huge delay.
I think, like Katrina says, Phil, if it's good to listen, but it's nice for you to participate. If you're able to. Did I do that?
No, it's happening when the phone line's connected for some reason.
Yeah, when there's multiple phone calls on, it
Okay.
creates feedback.
I was just going to suggest or re-suggest, Phil, if you have a comment or something, just use the chat box and we'll see it come up. While Phil is typing, we went back to community gardens, I think. Is this what we were talking about?
Yeah, we just closed
Yeah.
the loop on just kind of an action item or next step on a proposed idea for just kind of combining community gardens with the existing project that downtown Charlottetown does. You know, perhaps combining food production with the flowers that are currently planted and sponsored by local businesses.
Okay. And Phil says he does not recommend the city stop growing flowers on the corner.
Food feeds the body, flowers feed the soul. I love it.
Okay. Good clarification. I misspoke. I thought I heard you say that at one meeting.
But perhaps we could have a balance.
Yes.
And food can be beautiful too. So food might be still an interesting theme if DCI is up for it.
I think the spirit of the project is variety and let's use as much land as we can for the purposes that are needed by our citizens.
Yeah, sorry, I know we don't want to belabor this. I just wonder if it could be a not either or, but a combination of both situation where
Yeah.
I know they've got the planters on the corners, so maybe, you know, if there's two planters on a corner, one is flowers, one is seeds and food production. Or maybe you alternate corners. So I think there's opportunities there. Good clarification, Phil. I agree that flowers are good for their souls too. So hopefully we can do something with this. Katrina, is that something you'd be able to look into with DCI or?
Yeah, that's no problem. I can reach out to, I have a few contacts there and I can talk to them. And I'll just say too, like there's those adopted corners, which are often full of flowers, although they do get very full of like annual flowers that like don't always look totally amazing. And sometimes they do also. I don't want to make that sound negative, but the city's beautification efforts aren't going anywhere. So all of the planters that you're talking about with the flowers, I can't imagine us getting that replaced with food or taken away. So I think the city will still be plenty full of flowers, even if the corners get taken over with a bit of food for a bit.
I just noticed Phil also mentioned pollution and dog pee-pee on the corners. So maybe we could put small little greenhouses. Okay. Let's try and move on and see if we're still going to be able to do this on WebEx. So the city updates, this would be from Katrina. I think the first on the agenda is Food Recovery Network. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, so that's just the project we've talked about a few times now. Wanted to give an update on it. That's the food waste project that's been funded through the Provincial Climate Challenge Fund. It officially launched week before last, so it's up and running. It's a partnership between the city and Farm and Food Care, but it's being run by Second Harvest. Just wanted to keep you informed that it's going largely, the responsibilities of the project are sitting with Second Harvest, but there is a survey going around at the moment that I can send everybody the link to. Actually, we'll do that. And if people can circulate to their networks, that would be really helpful. Specifically, it's meant for potential food donors. So those that might have surplus food for donation at the commercial scale. So whether it's retailers, restaurants, producers, processors of some sort, distributors, that kind of thing. So just looking to get those responses as part of an initial study they're doing on the state of food waste in Charlottetown. And the island in general as well. So kind of even if obviously that extends outside the city. Yeah, but other than that, it's kind of going with good media attention, and the pilot will run for a year, largely focusing on efforts to recruit people to the app that Second Harvest has that connects those with extra food with nonprofits that can put it to use. So it's just a bit of good news.
Any questions on that project for Katrina?
Katrina, at the risk of me mixing my day job with this with I know that Second Harvest has been flagged as an organization that is involved in food diversion with all the surplus potatoes right now in BEI. Do we know if that's combining in with the project, the food recovery project taking place, or yeah, if that's fitting in at all?
To be honest, I don't know what they're doing on the potato front. They are, I don't know how they would hope to find homes for all those potatoes, but I mean, they're great at their jobs, and I imagine that they are working where they can. I would be curious. I could get an update from them on it.
Oh no, that's okay. That's just something I can ask about at work, kind of thing. I was just wondering if those conversations had come up through the food recovery project. Yeah.
Not, I mean, we certainly talked about the issue, and Farm and Food Care is definitely concerned about it and is involved in some of those conversations more so than the city is. But yeah, if you are interested, just let me know, and I can always, my contact at Second Harvest is great. So if you do want somebody to chat with there, just let me know.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. It was great to see that that's got a lift off and things are starting to roll. You're sending out the contact or the link so we can promote it?
Yeah.
New projects for the city.
So this one actually, I mean, things have been sort of changing quite rapidly, as I alluded to before. So I had some different things in mind to discuss here than I do today when I first put it on the agenda. I think it might just sort of roll in nicely with the next item, honestly, and sort of the future direction of the Food Council. I think at the moment, because my role's been changing so much, or has been shifting directions so much, at the moment, I'm sort of just spending time trying to set a direction for it and for food work within the city, and just like wrapping my head around some of what's been done in the past and what is kind of outstanding from existing plans. So like the ICSP and even the Let's Talk Food report that was done a number of years ago. One thing on my mind that I don't necessarily need information on tonight from anybody, but that is outstanding in the ICSP and is one of the only things that's outstanding in the ICSP relating to food is a food strategy for the city, or like a food security strategy. Lots of other cities have them, and I do think it would be a good idea for us. I think we would want some strong partners on it, and of course want the Food Council heavily involved, but kind of just in my preliminary thinking about that. If there's interest from within the Food Council, then that's something we can, I can see Megan nodding.
I'm sure Sean is his ears are burning too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a really good idea. And I think aside from the Food Council, there hasn't been a lot of dedicated food power within the city up until this point, and there's a little bit more right now. And I think it could be a really great thing. So that's just on my mind, and you'll probably hear more about that from me in the future. But if anybody's eager to discuss more, we can, as an aside or as part of the next portion of the discussion. Yeah.
Well, it's a good segue. Food Council focus area. I was reviewing the strategic priorities we had from 2021 to 2022, and we had a municipal policy review, which we've been doing on certain themes. There was the food asset map that was something that we need to focus, and that we are doing things on it. The other one was town hall conversations, engaging stakeholders. And I think that was more geared towards policy review, but that could be something that that could roll into a food security strategy. as opposed to just the policy reviews. We did have also if you recall from the strategy workshop we did, I think we had 4 or 5 pages of items that we identified as things that we might want to work on. The strategy was only for a year, so it would be completed in the spring of 2022. So we only have a few more months to go. So this would be a good time with old council, new council, to maybe come up with a new list of items to work on. It's just one suggestion. The whole council gets to chime in, and let's see what we come up with some ideas. We may not finish that this evening. We have about 25 minutes left, but we could engage in a conversation this evening to see where that brings us for our next. Anybody want to take the floor? New projects? Phil?
Okay, can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Following up on what you just suggested there, Bernie, on terms of a food strategy, if we look at this evening's agenda, we sort of have an outline for an action plan, I think. And maybe if each of us go back and sort of put together sort of a couple of suggestions for scale of community gardens, how to get local food into restaurants, suggestions for greenhouse scale per household, how to deal with food waste, how to get rec centers and schools to carry more local food, etc. And if things ever open up again where we could actually have a town hall meeting, maybe get some public participation verbally or solicit it online somehow. And if we could put together, I don't want a lengthy document because I don't think City Council would read it, but if we had, with 3 or 4 pages of bullets that suggest actions that could accomplish these goals, I think that would be really worthwhile. So that's my suggestion, is that maybe we propose some actions for each of these headings. A strategy is just, a strategy is something that says, lays out facts and figures that somebody should consider. And I think I'd rather see an action plan than a strategy.
Okay. Thank you, Phil, for sharing. Any other ideas?
One that crossed my mind is, so we're hearing that City Charlottetown wants to develop a municipal food strategy, and then we know that the Food Council's current strategy is winding down, like the mandate or the timeline for it will be wind down in the spring. Do we know, I mean, spring is pretty soon here, so I think I know the answer to this question, but do we know the timeline of the municipal food strategy? Is that like approximately a year?
I mean, there's no plans in the works at the moment. Like there's no, like I am the momentum. Like there's no, like what I just told you is the information that there is to share. So it was, my intent with bringing it up tonight was to sort of gauge people's response. A major hurdle in my mind is kind of that public engagement side of things of, like, I think it's really vital. And there was a Let's Talk Food Summit that some of you probably attended, I don't know, before my time with the city, but I think in my mind, we sort of need like a Let's Talk Food 2.0 as a bit of a way to put that strategy together, as well as probably some targeted stakeholder engagement and maybe some surveying and that kind of thing. I don't think it has to be, like Phil said, I think it raises a good point, that it doesn't necessarily need to be like super, maybe onerous isn't the right word, but like, can be concise and maybe we don't need to like go crazy with it. But at the moment, there's no real timeline. And part of that is that I would want a pretty solid consultation behind it. I know we could do something online, but in an ideal world, we wouldn't. But yeah, we're at budget time right now. We're kind of in a planning phase, and that's really all I have to say. I don't have a set timeline.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. If, just speaking on behalf of myself, if I can be of any help as a member of the food council, feel free to just loop in the food council on whether it's updates or whether it's just like, would anyone like to help with X, Y, or Z? Feel free to do that. Yeah, I feel like we could, for the, for the new food council strategy, I feel like it'd be neat to discuss how we want to go about that. Or in other words, what kind of process do we want to have to develop a new strategy? I feel like we could make something that is simple and timely, but pulls together a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different information. Like, for example, if we were to divvy up the work, have someone look at a jurisdictional scan, look at food strategies in other cities, provinces, countries. It's all good. Have someone do some research on food policy or something like that. Have someone develop a public survey. What would you like the Charlottetown Food Council to be working on for number of years? Like, I feel like we could develop a not onerous process where we're getting multiple lines of evidence, and then we could pull it together and discuss and come up with, and I think Phil's idea is if they want to come up with a document that's a short document, action oriented, within the scope and mandate of the Food Council, and would just be fulsome so that we have a good scan of the environment before we put it to paper. That's and of course I'm willing to help out with that. That's one suggestion for how we go about the new strategy for the Food Council.
Thank you, Sean, for those suggestions. Megan, you have your hand up. You're next.
Yeah, and my thoughts are kind of like all over the place now because I think we've said a number of things since then. I think having a Let's Talk Food 2.0 would be really key. And sort of a 2.0 of the community conversations about food. So I see the Let's Talk Food being really rallying around maybe sort of just our food charter and eliciting some of the conversations in general about food, but maybe some of the smaller like topic areas that maybe they come from that event, or whether hopefully it's in person that we can do things soon, but having some of the smaller conversations, because I think what we've experienced the last few years on the council and what I've noticed at least is that when there's lots of great ideas, we can talk about things, but then once we get to it, okay, we've made a strategy, or we've talked about these ideas, then what is the action? And I think that's what I've really appreciated this past year, is that the strategy that we came up with, while it wasn't action oriented, the goals themselves led to actions that we identified that were timely priorities. And so I say that because I'm wondering if, even though the strategy is expiring this spring, if we update it to reflect, current time, but I'm not sure how much would maybe change. Obviously, we have a whole conversation about that. But the short-term goals being policy review and changes, I think that's always going to be the case. There's some stuff this year that's not complete. There's some new stuff that hopefully we will get to, like we haven't got to local procurement definitions and all of that stuff, the research that was done around that. And then the longer term, or I can't remember which way they were. Short term was maybe town halls, and long term was this work. I would have to look back at the documents, but I'm just wondering, I don't know if we need to do, maybe we have a special meeting on talking about actions, but I do like Phil's suggestion on having something more of an action plan, given that hopefully, Katrina, you're successful in getting a municipal food strategy, because our actions could feed into that strategy, because we are an advisory council, and just recognizing them when there aren't those goals. Before we had the strategy last year, it was difficult, like unless we had a project going on, conversations just kind of went all over the place, and they didn't carry across meeting to meeting with actual action. And I feel like if you're not seeing a project through to completion, it's pretty hard for engagement. So those are just my thoughts. And the only other things I was going to mention were like ideas, just because they've sort of fallen off, but I know they were key pieces of the last time we did the review, was local food procurement, use of green spaces, and then backyard poultry. I missed the last meeting, so I don't know what the conversation was around that, but that whole backyard food production piece. And I'm not opening that can of worms right now with 8 minutes to go, but just there are some pieces within those ideas that we had. So I'm going to stop talking now.
Thanks, Megan. I guess just like a few quick points about some of what you said. I think lots of great suggestions and thoughts in there. I would sort of agree with you. Like, so I think this sort of segment of the meeting has taken on a little bit of a tangent, maybe, in that I think my original intent with putting it on the agenda and what we'd sort of discussed at the last meeting, I think, or at least in my mind, was more of that idea of kind of just revamping that strategy that we had already. Like, I think even though the timeline that was put on it by the consultant was only a year, I think there's a lot in there that we haven't done, just because they were big goals, a lot of them, like not so much because things haven't been done, just because there's more to do, and like the town halls because of COVID and that kind of thing just weren't really that feasible in a nice way. So my thoughts with this portion was more that we were coming with like ideas for maybe like new policy target areas or that kind of thing, like just, you know, almost like a recap of where we're at, and with those certain things wrapping up, like, you know, food waste seems like it's nearing a completion, greenhouses seems like it's nearing a completion, like where we want to go. But maybe with the time left, we don't have so much time to discuss those ideas tonight, so maybe it's goes on the next agenda. I think there's still, you know, time, there's still momentum on some of these projects, like they're not you know, completely tied up with a bow yet. But then exactly, Megan, I think re-looking at some of those priority areas that were identified in the past but haven't been looked at. I will note, I think maybe go back. I mean, we've had a few conversations on backyard food and backyard poultry, and I think at least at the moment we seem to be missing a champion on that front. Nobody is overly in support. I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but I think that we do need someone who strongly believes in that to push that one forward, even despite the work that's been done. But anyways, that's, like you say, not a can of worms to open with now 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just reading the minutes, I couldn't really understand. It just was sort of generally.
No, that makes sense.
But I know that there's that whole list of that Bernie just mentioned of like things that were raised at that strategic planning meeting that we could come back to. Could that document be recirculated? Like that was Pauline 18 that worked with us?
I can send it again, yeah.
Just in case the new members, or they probably.
I sent it like a month or so ago.
Okay.
I think I sent it after the last meeting, but I will send it again. It's no problem.
It's okay. It's probably in my inbox that I just can't see it right now.
Oh, Bernie, you're muted. I'm sorry, there was feedback going on, so I muted everybody.
I talk to myself all the time. So any other comments from other council members? Or council members that have already spoken, if there's something that kind of, while others were speaking, kind of creates a new idea in your head?
I'll just note briefly that I didn't realize that it was a 1-year strategy. I think that the session predated my time on the council. So yeah, I mean, if it was a 12-month strategy and there's still multiple items to address, I'm good with kind of working on the existing slate, and if folks find that there is a certain focus area that's relevant today that may not be in the document, we can always discuss and look at a new initiative. But I'm all for kind of addressing the current slate that we have. Like myself, we don't have to get into it tonight, but local food, whether it's definition, procurement, etc., that would be of interest to me, just as an example. So yeah, I'm good with the approach that folks are proposing.
Jordan, did you have your hand up? Thank you, Sean. No. All right. Okay.
So, oh, go ahead, Bernie.
No.
So I was just going to say that maybe then for next month, if people can kind of go through that list. Megan, I saw that you said you found it, which is great, but I can send it again too, just so it's at the top of everybody's inbox. And just if you can look at that list and come with ideas of what, there's a lot on there. And if you can come with ideas of what you think the next sort of rung of priorities might be. Great.
And I would also add to that, when you're thinking of your ideas based on the strategy, or if you're bringing in new ideas, my take back from what some, or I guess everybody was saying is, if you can think of a process that goes with that idea, trying to keep it concise and try and make it action oriented. We do have an idea, but then if we have something to supplement that idea with, that would make it action oriented in a way that's concise. So if we are coming with a new document, to speak to what Sean and Phil, and well, I guess everybody was saying that spoke, we need to make it kind of not too long. It can be robust but concise. And if it's action oriented, we seem to be very action minded. We might get stuff done in a timely fashion, hopefully, depending on what COVID does and life brings. But that's that would be the take back I got from here, because we don't really have a lot of time this evening to go into the nuts and bolts of it. And hopefully we can put that in the next meeting. That sound okay? Everyone?
I think that's a good suggestion, Bernie. Actually, just kind of maybe to add on to that a little bit, just a thought that yeah, maybe if everybody can just sort of do that, regardless of if it's a new idea, or maybe it's what you're already working on that you think will carry through the next year. So for example, like Samara, we're kind of just starting this community garden work. It might take a bit. So probably, unless you have new ideas, which would be great to hear, that might be kind of more your focus. And like those sort of action points for whatever that topic area is for the next year, or if there's a few things to wrap up with the current topic area, and then you think you might be interested in moving on to the next one. Just putting together a few action-oriented bullet points, whether it's on the continuing project or the new one. And then maybe an action plan is as simple as pulling all of that, agreeing on it and pulling it into one document.
Any final comments from anybody on the committee? No. Still saying, oh, maybe goodbye? You think goodbye? Okay. Okay, well, we're 6:59. Can I have a motion to adjourn the Food Council meeting? Bill, motion? I don't think we need a seconder, but Sean raised his hand for as a seconder, so I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much for spending the time on Zoom tonight. Stay warm, be safe, stay healthy. See you all later.
Bye.
Ready? Good night.
Minutes, Brad.
Take care.
Bye.